Canby, and welcome to another riveting Planning Commission meeting tonight on Monday, August 22nd, 2022. We, like all meetings, will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Excellent. With that, we will move on to item number 2, which is our consent agenda. And I will take a motion for the approval of our consent agenda items.
I move to accept the consent agenda items.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda, including the Planning Commission meeting minutes for the January 10th, 2022 meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any opposition or abstentions?
Hi there, Brad Roberts checking in.
Oh, hello there. So we'll get to you in just a moment. But with that, we'll finish up this and say it's approved unanimously. Okay, so now we come to citizens' input on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on non-agenda items. Each person will be given 3 minutes to speak. Staff and the Planning Commission will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizens' input before the meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. Tonight, we have Lana Bollinger, is that correct? Did I pronounce that right? Who would like to talk to us about urban renewal standards. So if you would, please come on up to the microphone and go ahead and just restate your name and your address, and you can go from there.
Okay, can you hear me? All righty. My name is Lana Bollinger. I live on the North Pine Street, at the end of North Pine Street. My address is on the card. And I only have 3 minutes, so I'm going to kind of give you a speed synopsis. I moved to Canby some 20 years ago, and I liked it because it was a small town and it was rural. There were open spaces and there were trees and a nice group of citizens. Over the years, things have changed a little bit. And in the last 3 years, they've changed a whole bunch in my little corner of Canby, which I considered my peaceable kingdom, my quiet little life. Birds and deers and turkeys and bunnies and clear skies and all that stuff. And little by little, that has been whittled away by urban renewal. Oh, excuse me. And in the last year, there's been a whole bunch of development on North Redwood and in North Pine Street. I used to walk out my front door and I could see a tree line down down Pine Street. Out my kitchen window, there was an empty lot that's owned by the Scott Company for many years, pretty much derelict property, but it was a nice little meadow. Now I look out my kitchen window and I see something I called East Berlin. All the trees on that property were cut down. Developers come and develop, they slash and burn. There's no attempt to save any of that tree life or the natural open spaces that come with it. And so I'm trying to figure out what process developers have to go through in order to have permission to conduct themselves the way they do. And I know from looking around in the planning department that they are required to put in a proposal, and then if the planning department decides that's okay, they go ahead with a permanent proposal. And one of the things they're required to do is have, storm drains, studies on traffic, etc. Also neighborhood meetings. Now I've sat in on some of these neighborhood meetings, and there's a lot of moaning and groaning and acrimony and sort of visceral things from the neighbors, and not much feedback from the developer. And so I thought, well, what happens? The developer has this neighborhood meeting, And how do they go back to the planning department and present it? Is there a tape? Is there a movie? Is there an essay of any sort that goes with this? I wish that the planning department would put somebody in these meetings to just sit there without saying anything and listen to the tone that comes out of the neighbors in the neighborhood about what is happening to their neighborhood. And so I went to the planning department. May I step up here for a minute?
Sure.
I went to the planning department and I said to them, well, gosh, what does happen? How do they present their answers to these things? And I'm taking the Trail Crossing 1 development as an example. They are required to have a meeting. They send out their notices to everybody. Here it is. And I'm only making one copy of this particular part of this comment because you can pass it along and because I know you know what these forms look like. Here's the Scott Company. They're saying we're having a meeting. Here's the list of people they sent it to. There are 205 people, I believe, on this list in the neighborhood. And these were the people that showed up at their meeting. There were 5 of them. I don't know if they were Skyping at the time. It was 2017. I don't believe COVID had started. We'll pass this around. You guys know what that looked like. Okay, so they had their meeting. Those are the people that were told. Those are the people that showed up. Now, what does the Scott Company do? They report back to the planning department. This is what happened. This is what they said to the planning department. People showed up. There were, I think, 20 questions here about things. Scott didn't say anything about some of them moaned, some of them insulted us, some of them cried, some of them begged, some of them were really upset. No, these questions are all pretty clear cut. They don't say what Scott said back to them. And what did, here, you want to pass that around? Sure. And what did Scott say back to them? It's on that paper right there. It's a pretty short sentence. We took those questions, we listened to those people, and we dealt with them as best we could. Period. He turns us into the planning department, and apparently they think that's all right. If that had been me in the planning department, I would say, go back to your dorm and write me an essay. Get your information in here in a real sense. And we should have them guarding our chicken coops. Really, are we that stupid? Are we? You talked last week about the bar, where the bar is set. And about people coming to Canby, oh yeah, you want to do something? You want to build something? Come on down to Canby, they don't care. They think everybody's their neighbor. They'll trust you on a handshake. You know, they're nice people. They aren't doing their homework. And this is an example. And I resent it. And you have ruined my neighborhood. Death by urban renewal. All right, so the next part of that is trail crossing happened. Now Trail Crossing 1 is on the table. And part of the Trail Crossing 1 project, Scott bought this property. The Scott Development Company bought the property. I think it's 1.5 acres. It's kind of L-shaped. And part of it is county and part of it is city. He is the private owner of that property. This is a picture of it.
So I know that you are.
I'm almost done.
Okay, very good. I just don't want to cut you short, but.
Around, it's an L-shaped piece of property. You're going to vote on annexing, permitting him to annex the county park pretty soon. The rest of that property he is going to develop, and sooner or later, it's private property, it's his. There is a bunch of trees on that property. I think you can see it.
Hmm?
I'm trying to get him to not cut those trees down. We're in a climate crisis. If we let him cut those trees down, we might as well just ask him to suck all the air out of the neighborhood. This is a crime against nature. I want somebody to do something. I went to the city council and asked them to offer to buy that property that those trees are on. They made an offer and he laughed. He says, no, he's not going to do that.
Yeah.
Which I assume, you know, I know him well enough to know that that would be his answer. He said he would consider it, and he did, and he said no. I want the city to declare that eminent domain, rezone it and make it part of Echo Park. And I want somebody in this town to figure out how to save those trees. That's my story.
Okay. Well, I do want to say that you have been heard. In fact, I don't know if I'm at liberty to say this, but Don and I actually had a conversation just last week about these sort of things and what you've been saying here and at the city council meeting. And, we are in the process of updating the transportation system plan and the housing needs analysis. And from that will come a pretty big change in review in the city codes. And some of the things that the path that you are on is codes that would help preserve trees within the city. Now, that is not something that we can do overnight. These things take a fair amount of time, especially developing brand new code. But rest assured, we are listening to you, and there are efforts being made. So unfortunately, that's as far as we can go at this point in time.
There is an organization called Tree Cities USA, and there are something like 35 cities or more maybe, in the state of Oregon who are involved in that. And you can go to Westland, Albany, Aurora. There's a 2-page list of these towns that have embraced the idea of joining in and protecting their trees. You could get a boilerplate from them, go to look at their ordinances.
Yeah.
They've already written them. We have a system for this sort of thing. Get those ordinances and stick them in our ordinance book. I don't see why this is going to take a long time and why the wheels can't turn. If there was an emergency of some sort outside, there was a fire, you'd be writing those damn ordinances up faster than you can talk. You can do it if you have the political will to do it, and will do it. You are destroying the nature of this town, not you, but we are. And you're sucking up all the air out of the place, and you're ruining the environment. And it's time to stop it. Stop it.
Okay.
Okay, I'll get out of here. One of the reasons I came is you're doing the Thermoglass people, and part of that on your agenda was going to talk about their neighborhood meeting. I realize that's a different neighborhood than what I live in, but I'd like to see how it's dealt with.
Yeah, so I can tell you that what normally happens is when we get a packet for an application like this, the forms that you printed out for this one are included in that packet to us. So we get a chance to see what was sent out to the neighbors, who attended, what the minutes for that meeting were. So that is what, as a planning commission, we see in the packet. And then
You see the details.
exactly what you saw when you went in is exactly what we see.
Well, that's,
I know, but that is what we currently get at this time. There's no recordings or anything of the meetings, but
Okay.
I've made a note about something there regarding that, and we'll go from there.
okay, thanks for listening to me.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming in.
All right, I'm going to sit right here and listen.
Okay. So is there any other citizens input? I don't have any cards. Anybody online? Okay, so with that, we will go on to our fourth item of the agenda, which is new business, which there is none of, so that was pretty quick. And now we will go into our public hearing for tonight. Okay. The matter presently before the hearing body, DR 22-06 Thermoglass, requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on the matter and are present in the chamber, please fill out a testimony card and give it to the recording secretary. When your name is called, please step forward to the microphone. If attending online, please type in the chat your full name and whether you would like to speak as a proponent or opponent on the matter. At the appropriate time, when your name is called, please unmute yourself. In all cases, please state your name, address, and interest in the matter for the record. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may pool time from one another. In so doing, those individuals may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. In these cases, please include a list with names and addresses of those pooling their time and turn it in with a testimony card listing the spokesperson's information. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to be entered into the permanent record. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable review criteria as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions or approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if only to concur with previous testimony. As a review, the public hearing will be formatted as follows. City staff will give a brief report regarding the application. The hearing body will ask any questions of staff regarding the report. The chair will open the public hearing for testimony. The applicant will be given not more than 20 minutes to present on the application. Proponents and opponents will then speak in that order for not more than 3 minutes each. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes for rebuttal. The hearing body will ask any final questions of staff and the applicant. The chair will then close the public hearing for new testimony. The hearing body will deliberate on the application with no additional testimony unless specifically allowed by the chair. This may result in the reopening of the public hearing. A decision shall be made by the hearing body at the close of the hearing, or the matter will be continued to a date certain in the future. This will be the only notice of that date. Does anyone have any questions regarding the procedure that has been outlined for the hearing? Wonderful. Does anyone, oh no, I've already read that. At this time, I would ask that any member of the hearing body who has a conflict of interest to please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict and whether you intend to participate in or abstain from hearing the present matter. Anybody? Seeing none. Also, if any member of the hearing body has had any ex parte contact with anyone prior to the hearing, including a visit to the site, please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time. Excellent. Does any member of the audience in the chamber or online have any questions of any commissioner regarding conflicts of interest or ex parte contact? If so, please direct them through the chair at this time. Wonderful. With that, right, that's page, okay, perfect. So we will now receive the staff report from Brianna Adada. Take us away.
Thank you very much, Chair Patton. Lainey, will you check that that's recording? It's the red square. Just double
Oh, I
check.
think it says recording paused.
Should we be recording the Zoom? No. Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Just checking. I see a little red square. I get concerned. All right. Good evening, planning commissioners. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Brianna. I'm an associate planner with the city of Canby. And tonight we'll be discussing the Thermoglass office and warehouse. So here's a subject property. It is 1.78 acres. It is largely undeveloped, and it does have a shared existing driveway with the property to the south, which was recently approved by this commission to be Lucky Foods. Here's a zoning map. It's in the M1 light industrial zone, and it is in the IO industrial area overlay. It is surrounded by like zoning. Here's a proposal of the site plan of the proposal. It's a 29,000 square foot warehouse and office with associated parking and site improvements. Per the IO overlay requirement, they will have 9 employees on the 1.78 acre site. The minimum is 3 per acre, so they are well over that. Here are the applicable criteria in our development code. It includes parking and loading, the light manufacturing zone, the industrial area overlay zone, access limitations, and our site and design review criteria. Here are the dimensional standards. These are all found in the IO overlay. The IO overlay does supersede the M1 dimensional standards, so I want to point that out. These are all IO standards. And you can, as you can see, the street yard, interior yard, rear yard, building height, and lot coverage all do meet the code. Here are the design standards. In these 3 areas, the applicant did meet the minimum points required for each section. There's parking, transportation/circulation, and landscaping. In one area, they are 1 point short, and this area is building appearance and orientation. Staff does agree with the applicant team that the first criteria here of having at least 20% of the elevation within the 5-foot minimum setback, or within 5 feet of the minimum setback, would be operationally very difficult with the curve Walnut takes. We do see enhanced interaction at the corner with the entrance, kind of a large pedestrian access way to that corner. So staff does believe the intent is being met, and this is kind of a unique situation that would be difficult to meet by the letter. Next, we're going to discuss parking. The ratios are 1 space per 1,000 square feet of warehousing space and 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet of office space. Proposed is 26,800 square feet of warehousing space, so we rounded that up to 27. And they are proposing 27 spaces allocated for warehousing, and then the office is 2,200. We rounded that down to 2,000. So 4 spaces are required and 4 are proposed. Next, loading and landscaping. 2 industrial loading berths are required for the size of this building, 29,000 square feet. They're proposing 3 to better suit their needs, which is perfectly fine. And you can see they will be partially screened with some robust landscaping there. It would be difficult to fully screen because this southern area, that is the access to the site. So we obviously can't block that completely. Second is landscaping requirements. You can see highlighted total landscaping area required is 15%. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. And proposed is 28%. And in the parking area specifically, we need 15% of that required 15% in the parking lot, and we're getting 25%. So they are meeting both landscape requirements. Finally, or one of the final pieces I wanted to touch on was access spacing. Both Sequoia and Walnut Street are collectors, and they require 100 linear feet spacing between accesses and intersections are required. And here you can see they do meet it on both frontages. Typically, I wouldn't point this out, but we did make a mistake in the earlier version of the staff report. It was corrected in the most recent version, but I just wanted to make sure that we all understood that they are meeting the access spacing standards. The agency and public comments, we received no public comments. We received agency comments from Direct Link Public Works, Canby Fire, and Canby Utility. In general, services and utilities are available subject to the conditions of approval identified in the staff report. I will say that this project did request a continuance, and some of these comments were addressed in that time. So, we don't need to get in the details because it was all resolved, but just to give you sort of a bit of information, it was kind of the other agencies. We needed to just have a little bit more communication and coordination, but everything has been worked out. So with that, based on the application submitted and the facts, findings, and conclusions of the staff report, we do recommend that the Planning Commission approve application DR 22-06, subject to the conditions of approval provided in the staff report. And I will take any questions.
Excellent, thank you very much. So with that, are there any questions of the commissioners on the staff report? Okay, then with that, I will now open the public hearing regarding DR 22-06 Thermoglass Warehouse. Who will be speaking for you tonight? Excellent. Please be sure to step up to the microphone here and state your name, address, and your relationship to the application. And you will have 20 minutes for your presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, sure. I don't know where anything is, so I'll let you go. It's fine.
And it won't start yet, not until you're ready.
That's fine. Yeah. I do also, can I go ahead and introduce myself and get started there?
Just 1 second, yes.
Did you plug in the timer? Is it unplugged?
Did I unplug? Well, I've been rifling through things.
I'm not sure. It's just not on.
It's on the small one. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see
Is it on
it.
now?
I can see it down here. There we go.
It's on.
Okay, yeah, I think the power strip was off.
Yeah.
I did not do that, just so you
Okay.
know. I did not hit
Is
that.
that PowerPoint? Gotcha. All right. From beginning, there we go. All right, thank you very much, Commissioners. Paul Boundy, LRS Architects, Managing Principal. Also tonight, Brad Roberts, the owner of Thermoglass, is also on the call, and he's going to say a few words as well. So thanks for letting us present this evening, and thanks, Brianna, for the staff report. Excellent job. And Lainey, finally get to meet you. Nice to meet you. Talking to her all the time. All right, let's get started here. Brad, do you want to tell us a little bit about Thermoglass?
Sure.
We're just going to go through, tell you a little bit about Thermoglass, go through what we feel are kind of the germane points of the proposal, and then we can have any questions. Okay.
Okay, very good. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Brad Roberts with Thermoglass, the applicant. And I want to tell you a little bit about our company. Thermoglass originated in 1950 in Portland, and it's been owned by our family since 1981 and currently operated by my sister and myself. And we're a distributor of bath products sold through stores, showrooms, plumbing wholesalers through 9 Western states. Just a little product background. We distribute shower walls, soaking and freestanding tubs, alcove and drop-in tubs, shower bases, shower doors. So if it's in a bathroom, there's a lot of products that we supply to the industry. And we're very excited to share our plans to relocate our world headquarters from Milwaukee, Oregon to Canby Pioneer Industrial Park tonight. And I also wanted to bring a point with the commissioners and interested public that we're very fortunate to partner with an extraordinary project group that has designed and developed several successful projects in Canby and the greater metro area. And our team is Paul with LRS, Robert Evans Company, Stratus Development, AAI Engineering. And like I said, we're thrilled to have the local experience and experience on much larger projects, but the fact that they've designed and developed in this area, in this park, it was very, very important to us. And we're very excited to have that experience and happy to have you, Paul, present our Thermoglass headquarters to everyone tonight.
All right, thank you, Brad. And just as a point there, Thermoglass is going to be the owner-operator of this project. So they do own the site, they own the property, and they'll be building the building for themselves. All right, so basic facts, 28,800 square feet. A lot of this you've seen in the staff report. Office support, warehousing of the product, very important piece. 31 parking spaces as mentioned. It's tilt concrete construction, very similar to what's going on in the rest of the park there. We'll talk about that a little more. 3 dock high doors for moving the products in and out, supplying or receiving and shipping. And then 1 on-grade dock as well for support and service. The site, which you've seen, we're very important to us to focus this thing as close to Walnut as we could. You'll see in the renderings and the views, the public entrance is close to Walnut. There's a couple things you'll see in the landscape plan I'll mention. Stormwater management was important as well. So there's a lot of landscaping on the site that you saw. We're using some of that for the stormwater management. There is a screen wall. We were trying to do as best we can with landscaping the loading area, but as Brianna mentioned, we're using the back-to-back with Lucky Foods. So their loading area, our loading area, and then utilizing the shared access there makes it very hard to kind of screen it. We're going to have a low wall along the side of it from Sequoia, and then we'll be landscaping out at the street at Sequoia to enhance that. Let's see. And then Brianna also talked about the loading or the access point off of Walnut, which we're requesting as part of this project. Site features a very robust landscape plan. The corner of Sequoia and Walnut, we're going to have a couple of basalt benches there, try to enhance that corner, make it visually interesting. We're going to have some very dense ornamental grasses in that location. And then similar continuing up Walnut, where we have the pedestrian access from Walnut, we'll have a similar basalt bench and ornamental grass theme there as well. stormwater management. Our landscape architects has designed this native meadow and mock stream bed to go along with this, with the stormwater, and they'll be surrounding the water quality facility planting, or facility planting, excuse me. And then the public zone is a mix of evergreen and deciduous ornamentals along the sidewalk, so that there's always something going on there, a little bit of color, a little bit of green. And then there's additional ornamental grasses behind that for screening. The building itself, as I mentioned, this is Brad's world headquarters, so 2,000 square feet of office space in there, conference room, break area for the warehouse staff and the office staff together. 23,000 square feet. This is a high bay warehouse. We've met with the fire marshal early on and understanding, his concerns about the access and the requirements that go along with that. The support space, the docks we've talked about, shipping, receiving, packaging area, very critical, and then support for restrooms and general storage. So fairly simple, straightforward project on the inside. Building exterior, we're using a color palette that's kind of a dark gray and a light color with a little bit of splash of, we're going to put some wood tone around the entry where people are closer to it, the underside of the canopies, around the entry points, and then utilizing some articulation as best you can within tilt concrete to separate out that office space in the white with the gray accents versus the warehouse itself, which will be the gray with a white accent band. So a little bit more about that on the, this is the Sequoia elevation on the bottom. You can see a little bit of that low wall in the lighter gray there. I'm not quite sure exactly what that is yet, but we want to make sure that does its as well as we can for screening the loading area. We're aiming for some fairly tall windows, fairly tall office space in there. The building being high bay is fairly tall in itself, 36 feet. So, and there is provisions being made for future mezzanine space for warehousing over the office space. So we're trying to get those windows as tall as we can, get the ceilings in the office space to be fairly tall and get some good daylight into that space. So as you can see, kind of the wood around the entry, the focus of the entry on the corner, and then also kind of breaking it up a little bit with that break in the massing between the office space and the warehouse space. And that is it. I could talk for 13 more minutes, but you probably don't want me to. So.
It's your call. It's your time.
I'm good. Thank you. Brad, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
I think you did a good job, Paul. That's, if I don't say so myself, a very attractive looking building and be a nice addition to the park.
Okay.
Okay, excellent. So if I was you, I wouldn't go anywhere because of the rebuttal and questions.
Sounds good. I will wait here.
I don't see a bunch of people lining up on the proponents and opponents, but we'll see what happens.
Sounds good.
So thank you very much for your presentation. We will now hear from proponents of this application for not more than 3 minutes each. Are there any opponents online? There are none here in the chamber.
No.
Seeing none, we'll move on to opponents. Did I say opponents or did I say proponents? Okay. Now for opponents. Are there any opponents to this application? There are none here in the chamber. Are there any online? Okay, seeing none. You would have 10 minutes for rebuttal now. Would you like to rebuttal anything? There's really not much to rebut yet.
No, thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and we'll reserve the time for the rebuttal, and we'll go ahead and see if there's any questions of the commissioners. And we'll start with Commissioner Ewert.
Thank you, Chair. I have one question. And I think this question has already been answered. This is warehousing, is that correct? You don't plan on doing any manufacturing?
There is no manufacturing. The manufacturing is done off-site. The products are shipped here. They process them, repackage them to go to the showrooms and and other vendors. And so it's a pass-through facility.
Very good. That's the only question I have. And I think you've got a great project. I'm
Good.
glad you finally got here. And
Thank you.
look forward to having you in our town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hutchinson, or Vice Chair Hutchinson, sorry.
No questions, thank you.
Commissioner Calkins.
Yeah, no questions at this time.
Okay, Commissioner Jarosh.
I have one question. Why are the loading bays oriented to the front of the building instead of the rear?
That has a lot to do with the turning radius for the trucks, because the site, I'll go back to the site plan here, but it's fairly shallow site. To be able to get into the back of the site and pull in is a bit of a challenge to get a truck turned and oriented and back into the building properly. They are set back into the building as they are. They're kind of, well, I guess I could be using the mouse to point at it, couldn't I? Where they're set back into the building here is because of that clearance to this dotted line here is the shared access. So we cannot have the trucks infringing on that line because that's shared circulation. So the truck's a 53-foot trailer with their cab. It's going to be about 63 or so feet. So that comes out to that line right there. So it's really to be able to pull in, back into the spots, and then pull out again. We were very limited in terms of where along this building facade we could do that.
I guess I don't understand that. So if those bays, if they were here, if this was, why can't this be here?
Because the truck would have to pull in, and this is the property line right here. There's nowhere to turn the truck and back it in to the property. This is an interesting site because it's fairly small. And we had two choices really, is we're loading directly on the Sequoia side, or we're loading on the south side to use the shared easement. And you can only get so close. I think if you look at the Lucky Foods loading, it's pretty much directly, kind of maybe a little further back, but almost directly across from where we are on this site. Because there's just, the large facility adjacent, there's no shared access, there's no driveway.
And I guess the reason I asked that question is I went back and looked at the Lucky Foods application, and you're right, it's like a mirror.
Yeah.
But part of the challenge, there's no opportunity to screen between the two properties.
Right.
There's no, landscape plan between the two properties, so there's really no screening of those bays when you're driving down Sequoia.
Right.
Okay.
Well, and one of the requirements was to share and use that access to make sure we're utilizing the shared access rather than having our own access point. So that also kind of, as Brianna pointed out, it was a requirement to use the shared access for this location. I mean, where shared access was available, we were expected to use it.
Okay.
That was the master plan for the facility.
Okay, well, that's too bad, because you know what, that's a busy road, and there's gonna be, there aren't many buildings on that road that have that front bay issue and screening. It's kind of a double whammy. There's front bay and you can't screen it.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I understand.
All right, thank you for answering my question.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, Commissioner Ellison?
Just one quick question on the stormwater plan. In one of the sets of drawings that we saw, it looked like there was going to be dry wells installed on the property. Is that now gone and everything goes to the swale?
There will still be a dry well on the property.
Okay.
The swale is sort of, call it pre-treatment, comes off the parking lot, driveway surfaces into this area, then it'll be going down into the dry well. The infiltration here, you have to get down 15, 20 feet or so before it'll have any meaningful infiltration.
And will that dry well be serviceable, or they're going to be able to maintain that?
Yeah, I believe it's located under the loading dock, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, it's somewhat similar to kind of this location right here.
I was pretty sure.
In one of the drawings, it was in the center loading bay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is accessible and serviceable.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we will, I believe, as part of the public works improvements along Walnut, also be putting a dry well in for the public stormwater as well.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming tonight.
Okay.
Hopefully we didn't scare you with our, I do have one question. Hopefully we didn't scare you off with our ranting and raving about things being delayed. So I'm glad that didn't cause a problem. One of the things, I do understand the exception for the 5-foot build out due to the curve on street. That's no problem. One thing I'm curious about is in the staff report on page 3, it says that the city has established a fee in lieu approach for the Oregon 99E Haynes Road intersection, and this proposed project would be essentially included. But then on page 11, in number 9, it says this in lieu fee shall be used for the city's Walnut Street Extension Industrial Connector Road project. Is it going towards Walnut, or is it or the fee in lieu going towards Haynes? And I wasn't sure if we maybe need to make a correction there.
Give me just 1 second, I'll look at the traffic report.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, so page 3 under intersection and roadway congestion section, there's a bullet point. It's like subsection, it's like dented in 3 times.
It's Haynes in the traffic study. So that's what I would default to.
Let me answer. Chair Padden, so the way the fee in lieu has worked is the contribution is going to Walnut Street. The impact is at Haynes. This is a collaborative effort between the city, ODOT, and Clackamas County. So that's essentially the situation. That's where the actual fee will go towards that city project to Walnuts.
Okay, so it's going to Walnut Street to help alleviate the problem on Haynes
Yes,
Road.
that's correct.
Oh, okay. I thought with the Walnut Street extension being pretty much in the books, now we were targeting Haynes is a thing to put money towards to start repairing.
And
So
Walnut Street is still in the final design phase. It has not been bid, so it's not started construction. So therefore, that fee in lieu is still in place.
okay, and with the cost of things, I'm sure.
It could,
It's gonna go up.
It could go up, yes.
Okay, no, that was the only thing. I just wanted to make sure that I either understood that correctly or if we needed to make any changes. So that was all I had for questions.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much. So with that, seeing no other stuff, I will close the public hearing, and we will now move into. Are there any final questions for the hearing body regarding the information provided in the public hearing? Oh, yeah. None?
Quick question, just for clarification. So in the traffic study, it mentions Sequoia and Walnut are collectors. And then in the staff memo, it says that Walnut Street has a functional classification of industrial collector. Is there a difference, Brianna, between a collector and an industrial collector?
Not in the way that it's designed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner Ewert?
I have one. On this shared access that we have to these two properties, given that one of the properties would change, are we gonna run into any problems with that moving forward? Because the way that the loading docks are on either one of the properties, you're not gonna be able to get a truck and trailer in there if somebody doesn't wanna play nice.
The easement is recorded over the 2 properties regardless of, future use. So, these 2 developments do seem to kind of work in harmony. If another tenant was to move into either of the properties, that easement would still be there. So it would be an existing condition that they would know about moving into the property.
Okay, so anybody moving into that property in the future, that would be the understanding.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we will now move into deliberation. Is there any deliberation regarding this application? And if not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve DR 22-06 Thermoglass Warehouse as submitted.
It has been moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve DR 22-06 Thermoglass Warehouse as submitted in the staff report. Is that good? We're getting better at this every time. Okay, with that, I like to do a roll call vote here. So, Commissioner Ewert?
Yes.
Yes, so we're taking a vote.
We're taking a vote.
Okay, excellent. Commissioner Hutchinson?
I vote aye.
Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Commissioner Jarosh?
Aye.
Commissioner Ellison?
Aye.
And I will also be an aye. Okay, with that, go forth and build showers till your heart's content. Thank you very much and welcome to Canby. We look forward to the groundbreaking ceremony.
Likewise, we look forward to being part of Canby. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You as well.
See, this is why I'm glad we are keeping the Zoom part, because it allows folks from further away to still be part of the process, and I think that's very valuable for this whole process. Okay, so with that, now let me get my paperwork all squared away up here. We'll put that over here, and we'll get the next packet of stuff. So there are no other public hearings on our agenda, so we will now be moving into our work session. The purpose of tonight's work session is to give the Planning Commission the opportunity to discuss the City of Canby Parklets. This information is preliminary in nature and often complex and detailed in content. Professional or contract staff is sometimes scheduled for participation. To make the most of the short time we are given for these meetings, public comment will not be taken at work session meetings. Although this is a public meeting, the Planning Commission cannot make any formal decisions in a work session. Next step actions are often determined by deliberation and discussion at a properly noticed Planning Commission meeting. State law requires local governments to notify the Department of Land Conservation and Development, the DLCD, at least 35 days prior to holding the first evidentiary hearing. And so with that, we will now move into our work session regarding parklets and receive a presentation from planning staff. Again, Brianna Adada, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the first Planning Commission work session regarding permanent parklets. This was, let me just jump in. This was a new program requested by City Council, kind of in the wake of these other two programs that are existing. So first is Open Air Canby, and it allows outdoor seating in private lots. And that program began October 2020 and was recently extended until May 2023. Separately, the temporary parklet program allows outdoor seating in adjacent public parking spaces. This is a very new program, and it is applicable to retail and restaurant uses in the downtown commercial zone only. That program began in June and is also slated to run until May 1st, 2023. And these regulations were newly created by planning as well as economic development, and there is a new type 1 application associated with that. The temporary parklet program is just that, it's temporary. City Council is very interested in getting this program moving. So this temporary action was kind of taken while we get the permanent program underway. So parklets, what are parklets? Parklets are public seating platforms that convert parking spaces into community spaces. Infrastructure that you could typically see in a parklet includes a platform flush to curb. You can see here, I like this diagram, it shows how the angle is compensated for. They also typically have seating, landscaping. You could include some bike parking, obviously safety considerations like barriers from cars, and also we do require them to be ADA accessible. Okay, so I have 3 discussion points, and then I would like to hear from all of you. These 3 discussion points were shaped from our first work session with City Council. Nothing is set in stone. This is kind of just the basic rough outlines of the program as staff has been instructed and also as we've researched other jurisdictions. So we would like this program to apply to all zoning districts, and specifically the uses would be retail and restaurant. The parklet must be adjacent to a street with a speed limit less than or equal to 25 miles per hour, so no collectors or arterials. When we are looking at an on-street parking situation, the threshold would be a percentage of available parking in the zone. So say there's 100 parking spaces in downtown. There's plenty more, but let's use that number. 5% would be eligible for this program, meaning 5 total on-street parking spaces are available within the entire zone. So the first either 5 businesses or the first few entities that maybe they might request 2 parking spaces. That would take the 2 out of the pool and just leave 3. So it's a 5 total parking space maximum that we are allowed to distribute for the program. Again, those are example numbers, but that is the concept for on-street parking. And then in private parking lots, the applicant would need to prove that the excess spaces are available based on the parking ratios for the existing uses in the lot. Next is the process. We envision this to be a type 2 process, and that includes clear and objective approval criteria, mailed and published notice. Typically for type 2s, notices are sent 1 to 200 feet in a radius around the subject property. We could make that up to 500. I think, especially considering public parking spaces, we might want to up that. It includes a 21-day public comment period, and ultimately a decision made by the planning director, so made by staff. But if it is appealed, it would come to Planning Commission. In addition to that, the Parklet permit and the associated business license must both be renewed annually, and those would be type 1 processes. So last discussion is the fees. We wanted to touch on what is the intent of the application fee for this permanent program. Is the primary goal to make the permit accessible for businesses, or are we aiming for cost recovery? Some considerations for that are review, inspection, coordination with other departments, as well as enforcement. And so here are some initial numbers that, again, were discussed at City Council, but all very preliminary. The initial permit would be $250. Annual renewal would be $100. Monthly rent per parking space would be $50, and that is in addition to the business license, which annually is $100, which the business should have anyway, but I did wanted to list it here. So some preliminary considerations that staff is kind of forming the program around, forming the application around, safety, liability, and design. So for safety, we want to require things like physical barriers, buffer space. We're going to make corner spaces ineligible, just so no turning incidents occur. And then a maximum number of spaces. Again, I touched on this before, kind of that ratio. We don't want to see an entire block taken up by one application. Second is liability. Things that we will require before approving a parklet would be ADA accessibility, a certificate of liability insurance, the OLCC license if applicable, an indemnity agreement to hold the city harmless, a maintenance plan, and the yearly inspections that will be done by staff. And then lastly, design. We will require a detailed site plan, much like our type 1s require now, so applicants shouldn't be completely put off by what we require. There is a baseline there, and this is no exception. This idea that they are ultimately impermanent but not mobile. We want them to feel as permanent as possible while still being able to remove them in a safety issue or say inclement weather, something like that. So there are a lot of examples of how these things can be built to kind of hit that middle ground. Minimal signage. We don't want these to be used as billboards for anyone's business. This is public space. The ground surfacing, we would like to see something different than the asphalt or the concrete that is there to sort of differentiate the space more. The vertical barrier will be important, and material standards. So, minimum material standards similar to what we crafted for, say, the food carts. And here's our timeline. It is general. Our ultimate directive was to have the program effective and available by May 2023 when those temporary programs expire. So in June, we were tasked with this program creation. We had our first mayor and council work session in July. Now we're coming to Planning Commission to get your thoughts and ideas. September, we'll have a joint work session. And then hopefully November through early 2023, the text amendment will be actually taken through the process. So you'll vote on it, or excuse me, you'll recommend a vote on it, and then city council would vote on it and make their decisions. So hopefully, February, March 2023 is when it'll begin, but we have until May 2023. So that's our tentative timeline. And with that, I kept it short and sweet. I know there's a lot of information here, but really I am here to gather all of your thoughts and ideas. So I'm happy to flip through the presentation as you would like.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So with that, I'll open up the floodgates. Who wants to say what? Who has recommendations? Commissioner Hutchinson.
I've seen these used as a de facto smoking area by a lot of bars and restaurants. I'm not sure that's what we want them to turn into, because they're kind of by definition in the entryway around a business. I mean, I don't like them myself just because you're right next to the automobile exhaust, and when a big diesel goes by, which there are plenty of around here, it gets pretty unpleasant, but that's, I don't have to sit there. But I do have to get past it to get into the business. And so I'm just trying to think of anything like that is bounded by the real estate that the business owns that might be getting a slide by moving it out front. I do like this a lot better than taking up sidewalk space. I think that we give away our sidewalk space too easily. And it's getting harder and harder for people saying wheelchairs to get around. And so I think that this kind of mitigates that. But I've seen all sorts of them, and I kind of start off as not a fan. I think it just kind of violates the barrier we have between traffic and people, and it makes things vague.
Thank you.
Okay, next. Anybody? Commissioner Calkins?
Hi, Brianna. How are you? Good to see you.
Thank you.
Can you go back to the topic, the first thing, the discussion topics? I've heard conflicting things in the murmurings of the pillars of the community here in town. So this would be effective for private parking lots as well, the program. And I just wanted to make sure, so if there's a private parking lot that wanted to do one of these things, they would also have to make sure the minimum parking for their zone. Now, if they had a variance for the parking, does it go by the variance number that they were given?
Yeah, we would take that variance into account. Those are primarily industrial areas where we've given parking variances. You want to go?
That's a great question, and
Thank you.
I think
I
it's
tried.
that could mean a lot of different things, what you just said. I would say that if it's a commercial parking lot, we'd be using the current parking standards in the code for that as a baseline. What Brianna said, we sometimes give adjustments. They're not really a variance, but so that would be some, on the industrial side. I mean, and again, I think that would be probably not where these are going to be placed.
Sure.
Because it's not, the ambiance is not there in an industrial parking lot. This is more like kind of duplicating what you see more in Europe. I mean, that's kind of the idea behind this.
Yep.
And so that's, I think, really more commercial areas. So,
Well, I was thinking some of the shopping centers along 99, some of the, some of the spots along those. They're kind of outside of the downtown core, but in the similar kind of shopping atmosphere, I guess.
Exactly. And I think, those would be based on, looking at what does the current code require, and then is there excess, parking available? If there is, then there'd be an eligibility based on how this is being framed now. That would be essentially the requirement for them to meet to be able to show there's excess parking to be eligible. Unless there was another change in that, but that's the baseline. And these were, the large framework here were vetted by council. Council's also really pushing this forward in terms of comments by businesses that have wanted this. So that's been the directive we've been pushing forward with.
Okay. And I think And it's interesting that you said sort of the European style, because I've heard people call Canby, say that Canby's turning into the Paris of the Mid-Valley. And so this kind of exciting. It's exciting to think about, because I think one of the things, when you think about what the lifeblood is of a downtown, it's people, it's foot traffic, and talking to a lot of business owners downtown, and talking about how having people out of their cars and walking around to different places that they would normally just drive by without seeing. I think it's important. When I moved to Canby, I think it was like tumbleweeds going down, Second Avenue. Nothing was going on, and to see it now is pretty exciting. So I hear what Commissioner Hutchison is saying. I am a fan of these when the weather's nice, and when they're done in the right way, and they're in the right spot. I'm sure we're going to hear talking, because there has been a lot of talk about the feel of the parking situation downtown as the shops have been filling up with successful businesses, right? And sort of that loss of the entitlement of being able to park right in front of the front door, and now I have to park over by Way Park and walk a block. So it's I'm interested to see where this goes. I think those are my comments. I don't really have any other questions right now.
Okay. Next. Judy or Commissioner Jarosh?
I have a few. Just, will there be a formal business owner survey to have some kind of document about interest rather than hearsay about interest? That would be a recommendation, a formal business owner survey. And when and who will be counting the parking spaces in the downtown area? Oh,
I'm working on it right now, actually.
okay, thanks.
I should have it for you soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I guess one of the things that I was thinking about is, this is so nice that you gave us an example of the guidelines from Vermont, which I thought was interesting, but I'd also like to see examples of how the cities track the compliance of a program like this, because I'm thinking when a city's dynamic and you've got businesses coming and going and changing, so I'm just making this up. So let's say all the 5% is consumed right now, and then a new business comes in, with an eatery or whatever, and they get shut out because they weren't there at the time. But then another business changes from being an eatery to a law office. I'm thinking of the historic city hall as an example. And so then that opens up those spots. So somebody's going to go in and say, oh, this other business was on the list, and we told them no, and now they're in a wait list. Or that sounds like a lot. And I'd be curious to see who in the cities keep track of that and what that looks like for them for compliance, assuming they all hold to some percentage like we're saying here. And also when I think about changes, I'm thinking about specifically, and I'm not picking on anybody, just something I know about. So the space between Wayward Sandwiches and the historic city hall, that's all going to change. And right now they've got all those picnic benches. Well, those aren't going to be there. So then what happens? So then they'll have a new application perhaps, but for an immediate need. I don't know. So that's what I mean by continuously changing of seating outside of a business and what's available and what's not. And then I'd also like to see some draft of decision criteria. So for instance, not only the overall 5%, but how many are there on one block as an example? And is 2 too many, 3 too many? How many eateries on a block versus other businesses like, physical therapy or something that have a lot of people coming and going. I don't know if that's feasible. And then I've seen one of the examples I think said it would be seasonal. You could only have it May through October or something. And I've seen others, I think Oregon City, where they're up all year and then they put up tarps and all sorts of crazy things. So are we going to need... Ben does that too? Okay. I guess I've seen some and they look terrible. And there was one thing during COVID, right, when everybody was trying to get more space, but is there going to need to be some sort of, stand around that, or are we just going to make it seasonal and just say you can't put up, anything to block the weather? I guess that's Yeah, I guess that's it. It's mostly to me, the question of tracking compliance and a wait list. And I guess it depends on how popular the idea is. And if we do a formal survey, I guess we'll know that.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Next. Commissioner Ellison?
So I second the need to see the formal survey. I think that's a really good idea. Pretty much nails the question I had, which is this purely council-driven, or is this, the restaurateurs of the downtown quadrant are just up in arms that they really need to have this program during peak hours? Parking is tight down there, and you have a mix of walk-in businesses as well as eateries and retail shops. So I certainly wouldn't want to see them penalized to have that access that kind of is the small town Canby vibe that people likes. I mean, no disrespect to Paris, but they're rude. We're nice over here. But I do think it would go a long way to see what the real interest is, and then to hear proponents and opponents from the businesses. I think about the mattress shop, the vitamin store, all these little boutique shops that have gone in, what would that do to them? And if there's some sort of quantifiable data that can show that, hey, this is a cool idea that can be seasonal. I think the seasonal would be great. And then just to get a little bit of a consensus. And then
I will just throw out that this is born from a demand from businesses downtown. There's at least 2 restaurants in the public space and 1 in a private space that are demanding this. Gotcha. So that's where this is coming from.
Gotcha. Okay.
Go ahead, continue.
And what was the other thing? Oh, also just to echo the smoking idea, that would be something I'd be interested to see how we grapple with the compliance of the smoking in relation to the entryway.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, first. Okay.
Oh, I just
Well, wait just a second, Commissioner Jarosh.
Just one other quick one. I'd be curious too of other cities that are doing this, if they have actual parking enforcement in alignment with this, because you'll have fewer parking spaces. Last year I was talking to one of the business owners who's a super business owner downtown, and I said, does that bother you that car is in your front door, in front of your front door all day, every day? And he said, no, that's my chef. So
There you go.
anyway, that's it. Parking enforcement.
Okay. Commissioner Calkins?
I just wanted to tag on to what you said and to give some background too, that the council, when you were at that meeting, was going to let it expire. And it was because of businesses that they re-upped the temporary one that Brianna mentioned. So I think council was just going to let it go away, and then that was it. But now here we are at behest of the businesses.
Mm-hmm.
One quick add-on to that has there been any discussion about parking, any kind of parking structure for overflow and being able to walk at least somewhat close to these areas? Or is that like a hornet nest item that's for another night?
So I will say that parking has been a topic of discussion for several years. Personally, it scratches at the back of my brain. I have been saying that we will or currently do have a problem for parking downtown, and have been told vehemently by members of the council that I don't know what I'm talking about and that we don't. That is one thing that needs to come from. That's one thing that needs to come from the city, and will probably come from the TSP and the housing needs analysis and such. Is what those needs, whether it's a parking structure or what sort of parking lots and what areas will need to be looked at for the future. So it is a thing, and it is discussed from time to time, but I think it's going to become more prevalent here in the next year or so.
It seems like with all the growth and all the demand and all that, especially if we do put on a program like this, man, it sure seems like we're headed for issues, especially given what the future may hold for the revision of the parks and the attractions and all the things.
And Chair Padden, and just to add to that conversation, there will be an analysis done for parking as part of the transportation system plan. That's going to set up a baseline for us to look at code changes that we understand is an issue. It's thematic. It's not just this issue. It's parking on streets that don't have parklets on them. And so it's also getting to the right number of parking spaces for commercial and industrial. Parking code needs to be looked at. So the baseline would be the TSP to basically come up with that. I would say that there would have to be a fairly robust, need for that to get to the point of having parking meters. That's a whole nother conversation. And I think the city's evolving. It may be a perceptional issue to some degree now compared to many other cities where I've seen parking meters and they really need parking meters because it's an issue. But it doesn't mean it's inconsequential either. So I think it's good to look at that holistically. That obviously is an important element for the TSP and the comp plan. And that just, by the way, was advertised today. So for consultant selection.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay. And then we'll get to Commissioner Ewert. He's been patient.
So I thought of, because of the Heritage and Landmark Commission, if we want to, let's say, take a section of downtown and make it a historic district, then it needs approval from 50% or more of the property owners, whether it's a block or 2 blocks or whatever. And maybe this should be something similar if we, get the feedback from all the businesses, not just the tap rooms and the restaurants. And maybe it should be a similar thing that if 50% are okay with it, then it should be approved for that block or however we want to do it. So that's just an idea.
Excellent.
Sorry, that's it.
No, you're fine. Commissioner Ewert.
This is a very, very interesting thing. First of all, I truly believe that if the city council wants to have this, then they need to buy a lot and put in some parking downtown so there's parking. If you're gonna take the parking away, you need to provide the parking somewhere else. Now, I don't know if I'm the Lone Ranger or not, but when I go to events in Canby, I shop downtown in Canby, I go to events downtown in Canby, parking is an issue. I mean, it just is. I don't feel like I'm the Lone Ranger on this. It is. So if we're gonna do something like this, I would strongly suggest, more than strongly suggest, that the city council, if this is really what they want, then buck up and put a parking lot in somewhere. Buy an old house, or, excuse me, I'm sorry, oh, sorry, Judy. Buy a house, a structure, whatever. That's newer than 50 years. and put in a parking lot. I mean, I'm just saying that there's gotta be, you can't create pressure within our downtown city, still have it be livable and not have an outlet for it in some way. I mean, it's just, you can't. I just see issues with, let me try to bring up an example. You got a restaurant and they want this, but right next door to the restaurant, you have a law firm or a dentist office or whatever. Now they moved into downtown Canby for a reason. Now, whether it was low rent, whether it was location or wherever else. And now, because we're going to allow this, all of a sudden the parking that they thought that they had, no matter how much or little it was, it just disappeared. Just because of I'm gonna call it a whim, that we want to be like West Lynn or Oregon City or Paris. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so I think that we need to, if you're gonna create one thing that's gonna cause a pressure point, you need to have an outlet for it. You need to provide for that, okay? So I'm just gonna say that. In reading this plan, another point is the fact that this also extends to private parking lots. We'll use Fred Meyer, for example, Safeway or wherever. Now, the people that own the restaurants in Fred Meyer parking lot, they're renting that space from landlord A, okay, whoever that is. I don't believe Fred Meyer even owns the building. They're leasing that long-term lease. But we extend this, and how does the city charge them $50 a month for the parking spots out front in a private parking lot? Who does that rent go to? It doesn't, does it go to the, if I own that land, if I own that parking lot, you can pretty well bet that, I mean, $50 a month may not make a big difference, but I wouldn't want the money to be going to the city of Canby because I'm the one that's striping that lot. I'm the one that's sealing that lot. And so I think we're getting into a gray area there legally by that.
And I'm just going to ask for a clarification from Brianna, but I believe private parking lots are not going to be, we're not going to be assessing a fee on a private parking lot. I think that's for public.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for
That's not
making
what
that
it says
distinction.
in here. It says specifically, it talks about private parking lots. But anyway, that being said, and then I guess the other question I have is, let's just say that I'm a plumbing store, okay? And I happen to be moved into downtown Canby, and I've got my storefront there. And I'm using that because I know that there's not any plumbing stores in downtown Canby, okay? Because I could use a lot of other examples, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to single anybody out. But let's just say that. And let's just say that, you know, I've got more inventory than my warehouse will hold. I've got more bathtubs. I've got more sinks. I got more whatever. And so, you know, according to this, in all actuality, I could rent 5 parking spots out in front of my building that are directly in front of my building, rope them off, and put my inventory out there. What's the difference between a restaurant and a thing? This isn't restaurant specific in my reading of this.
There's a limit, you're correct, but there is, 5 would be more than what we are identifying here.
It would be what?
5 is more than what we're suggesting here as a number. I believe
5?
5 parking spaces.
5 parking spaces.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
let's just say I wanted 3.
Yeah.
And I wanted to set my bathtubs out there, or I wanted to
Yeah.
set my, you know, let's say I was a physical therapy place and I wanted to move my couches and chairs out there because I wanted to put 3 more doctors inside. Now, that may sound ridiculous, but what I'm saying is that we either need to, if we're intending this to be eateries, then we need to craft it for eateries, because I got a feeling that what you're gonna have is, and I'm not gonna name any businesses, but I'm gonna see that if somebody said, man, I could get a little more space, it could turn into something that we don't want it to be, okay? So I'll throw that out there. And I think that there's just a fairness here. When I look, our downtown is not that big. It's just really, really not. And we're already crowded, especially at event times. And if I've got a business down here that is not food related, but yet the food related people decided they wanted to push out into the streets, and their people that are eating at their restaurant are parking in the parking spots that I thought that I had, I'm either going to complain about that or I'm going to leave downtown Canby and go somewhere else, because it's not acceptable for my business anymore. So either we're going to turn downtown Canby into just a food court, or there's going to be a whole lot of people that are gonna say, and if I was a business owner, that's the way I would be. I would say, you know what, the heck with this. I'll move to West Lynn, where they actually planned this ahead of time when they built their main street and they built their area. And they did that right. You know, we already just did it with the food cart pods thing, whatever it was that we did. We really didn't provide any parking for that, really. We're on-street parking, and now we're getting rid of more on-street parking. So I guess my point is, in all of my ranting here, is that if we're going to do this type of thing, and I've spent a lot of time in Paris, I do not want Canby to be the Paris of the Lamb. Trust me on that.
Sorry for all the Parisians watching us.
Well, whatever.
I used the wrong word. I didn't make it up. I've heard it called that in a complimentary manner.
Well,
but
we're not going there, in my opinion, but I'm just saying that if this is what we want to do, we need to create some outlet for the pressure that we're creating. We've done it with the food pod cart thing, whatever. Now we're looking at this just because it's a huggy feely squeezy thing and everybody else is doing it. We've got to create an outlet, or our downtown is either going to become a food court, a 100% food court, or it's going to die, one or the other. And so that's kind of where I'm at on it.
Okay.
You want me to tell you how I really feel now?
I think we got it. But thank you. Go ahead. Commissioner Hutchinson.
I'm going to pick on a business in a different municipality. Luck Luck Vietnamese Kitchen on 2nd and Taylor in downtown Portland. They actually have platforming that it completely covers not only the parking area, but transit. They took a lane. And I'm quite sure that they're paying off PBOT to some significant amount to be able to do that. But they have clear roofing material. They have power conduit. They have tables. They have water stations, bus stations. And it's bounded by the front of their business. But at what point does this just become an annex to the square footage? And do we get in on it with the tax receipts? Because, I mean, what I saw here is they essentially added 8 tables to their restaurant, and nobody else gets to use that space. And Portland their government is fragmented, and so I'm sure that they're just paying PBOT, and PBOT's like, we enforce, and then that's the end of it. And so, I can see why businesses would be in favor of this, because it seems to me like you're essentially annexing while you're bypassing all of the building codes, and you're bypassing the tax rolls, and you're bypassing all kinds of stuff to increase the capacity of your business. Europe has a real problem with handicap accessibility, and they pretty much acknowledge it everywhere. And so it's something that we take a little bit more seriously than other cultures do. And between all of these things kind of coming together, I just kind of see we're just giving businesses a buy on all kinds of safety and civic responsibilities just so that people can eat out in the sun. And, we had a business, I would like to see more decks for this sort of thing, or rooftop eateries if you want to eat out in the sun. I don't really see that it needs to have to come at the expense of an open business frontage.
Okay, so go ahead, and then I would like to share my comments.
I just want and not to defend the council, but just as a point of accuracy, again, they were going to let we're not trying to do something they want to do. They were going to let it sunset and die. But on behest of businesses, they said, if we're going to do it right, let Planning Commission take a look at this and see if this is something that, is feasible or whatever. Let's see what we can come up with. And so we would really be saying no to the businesses, right? And if it comes to a vote, we might see them here talking on the behalf possibly. So just wanted to be accurate on that piece. And also, to something you mentioned, we do have businesses downtown that have their wares outside now, and so they're on the sidewalk. You know, we have people eating on the sidewalk and stuff. So I think, you know, some of it's happening almost in a de facto way from some of the businesses. And so, you know, I think I'm probably the only one who doesn't think that downtown has a parking problem on the dais here tonight. But I don't think, you know, events, busy Friday nights, I'm downtown a lot, and I rarely have an issue finding a parking spot right in front of the place I want to go to, except for when there's I know on Friday night during the big night out, I'm probably going to walk from my house. I'm not going to try driving down here because it's going to be a madhouse when the fair is in town. You know, a busy Saturday or Saturday night when stuff's happening. But I don't think you can make the problem based on 10% worst case scenarios. So that's just my piece on that. Now I can't wait to hear what you say.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, this is another thing that I had written down here that I did. And the other thing too is, and I just want to throw this out, I didn't see the police department contacted about this. Did they have any comments with this at all? Because I'd be really shocked if they didn't.
This would be vetted through that process, obviously, and just like the temporary encroachment permit has a sign off by Public Works and police, this would have the same, and planning would have the same process. Police is obviously an important element. Safety is an important element. How close do you get to the edge of the stripe of the parking space is an element. We are not going into the micro detail, but that's where this would end up going as the next layer. This is not going to go all the way to the edge of the stripe of the space. There will be some buffer there, for example. I mean, that's, and again, 25 miles an hour is why we picked that, because if it's faster than that, it's probably unsafe for people both sitting there and for those people driving by it.
Well, and I think that is another thing that I thought about with this is, you know, if we're going to do this, do we allow alcohol to be served in those outside venues? You know, getting hit by a car at 25 miles an hour still kill you. And so I'm not sure. And then the whole safety issue, as far as police are concerned, when you start putting people out like this, where you've got cars going by, this is a safety risk in our day and age that we're living in.
Well, I think I just want to throw out there that this isn't a business putting up a chain and putting tables on the parking lots. It has to be an elevated platform. It needs to have railings. It needs to have planters.
Okay.
It's someone, I mean.
Somebody driving by can still take advantage of that situation in this world that we're living in.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose someone could jump up over the thing and crash into the platform at 25 miles an hour, but it's not. There is some, in most of these things that I will be getting to hopefully eventually, they have some pretty significant rules set in place of how to mask these off and how to provide some safety for cars bumping into it or clipping it.
Well, okay, sure, we can put cement barricades around it. That's not necessarily what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the threat level as far as the police are concerned in this kind of situation where you have groups of people. I'm not sure that, you know, in Paris, it's a lot of those downtown restaurant sidewalk things. Istanbul, these are where things happen.
Sure.
And I would be very, very surprised if our police didn't say, wait a minute, we need to think about this because we can't protect this situation.
Okay.
Okay? And then there's the other thing too, is the police having to get through this to enter a building if there is an instance inside the restaurant. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this picture right here in front of me with all the fences and the platforms and everything. And if I was a police officer and I needed to get inside that restaurant because there was a threat inside the restaurant, that'd be an issue.
Okay.
So I'm done talking. You go ahead now.
Okay. So, thank you very much for accompanying this one. I did a little research. I cast my net a little wider, and I looked at Denver, Eugene, the city of Phoenix, and Jamestown, New York. And I found that there were many of these that were very similar to the one that you provided to us, but there were some things that I thought were good that we could maybe tease out and add to this for your consideration. So one, I agree with folks that it should be no smoking. There should be no smoking in these areas. They are essentially an extension of the business, and there should also be a perimeter around this platform. The same perimeter for a building should apply to that. I echo the sentiment of some of the commissioners in that I feel that this is, if your business has grown to the point where without putting seating in front, you would not be able to serve your customers properly, then you need to work with city staff and find a new business downtown that you can grow into so that a smaller business can come into Canby and then start that birthing cycle of a business in Canby. That being said, I think its temporary nature is paramount. It can only be for like the nice times of the year, not year round. If it's year round, it's going to become a permanent structure, and it's going to look like a derelict shack like the ones I drove by on Portland last night. It was disgusting, and I do not want to see that downtown, and I think that is echoed by all of the members of the Planning Commission. Some things that I would like to see is so as far as businesses going out, one of the things that Phoenix put into their program is they actually have to get permission from the businesses that utilize the parking near their business as part of their application. And if they cannot get sign off from the other businesses around them to be able to take advantage of that parking lot, then they are not able to move forward with the plan. I think that would be a very clean way to take it out of the hands of the city and the planning department to try and police that sort of stuff. So if a plumbing company or a lawyer's office doesn't want to give up those parking spaces, then they don't sign off on the paperwork. And I think that would go a ways to cleaning that up. I like the 500-foot notification because some of the businesses can be bigger or smaller, and in the future, some businesses might be much bigger. And so that, I think the 500-foot radius would make a ton of sense. Let me just see here. Applicant is required to obtain support from adjacent property owners. Applicant must circulate the petition and obtain signatures of support from the owners of property which Parklet will front. Any immediate adjacent property owners on the same side of the street, and 51% of the remaining property owners on the block. So this is in Phoenix's. That's what I was reading from. And then here, part of Phoenix's too, one thing that stuck out was the parklet must be well maintained, clean, and kept in good repair in compliance with the maintenance agreement signed by the applicant. So in there, they actually sign an agreement with the city that they're going to maintain these to a certain standard. City staff will monitor and enforce property maintenance and appropriate use of parklets. Applicant will be advised if parklet is found to be out of compliance with maintenance agreement and or allowed use. Misuse of the parklet, safety issues, and or lack of maintenance will be grounds for the city to revoke the permit and require removal of the parklet, and then essentially also bars them from application in the future. I think that is something that would make sense to put in there. Let's see here. I'm glad to see the information about the insurance. There's several of them. This one that you had sent us, I don't think mentioned the insurance, but most of the other ones do. And it's about changing the limits of coverage, adding the city on it, and then also indemnifying the city.
We have a draft of that we applied to the temporary application, and we're working with our city attorney as well to carry all of that legal info through, so.
And Chair Patton, just as well, there was discussion with council, and with this joint session coming up September 21, we'd like you to share out, we're obviously taking notes, but that's with council. There was discussion about adjacent property acknowledgement using Oregon City's template.
Okay.
So that did come up. It was not landed on as to plurality and consensus amongst the council. So that would probably need to be a deeper dive to come up with what that standard should be, which would be helpful for staff to get all the input and to get to plurality. That would be the goal of that work session.
Okay, excellent. Another one here is there's no permanent roof structure. Parklet shall not inhibit the adequate drainage of the stormwater runoff. So I think in your thing, I think we need to make sure to call out to ensure that this thing is done so that it doesn't impede drainage. And a lot of times you end up with a bunch of garbage building up around the parklet and leaves and debris. So to whatever effect we can work on mitigating that, that would be great. Let's see here.
Does it mention temporary utilities being brought to the parklet, power, water, and such?
Yeah, so some of them that I have read mention the utilities. Some of them say, it says, most of them say that they can't be exposed. I personally do not want to see anything overhead. I don't want to see cords running over the sidewalk. Some allow that sort of thing as long as it's at different heights. I personally do not want to see anything over the sidewalk. I would say that if there was a way to put in their rules, if you want utility to the thing, you have to pay to have like a cord chase or something put into the sidewalk or something along that line. But it's a fee, it's a cost on the business owner's pocket. It's nothing to do. The city does not cover that. Yeah, and even so, even if there's not roofs or anything, there in Phoenix's it says the parklets must include some vertical elements, planters, posts, anchored, removable umbrellas, and such. I think to Commissioner Ewert's point of making that more visible as you go down the street, that was sort of the read that I was getting from them, is by having some posts with flags or something along that line, not a roof structure, but something there. It kind of breaks up that line of sight, so it's not just even at the 3 feet. You kind of see that as an extension of a building or whatever, and it might cause some traffic calming as people drive by it. Let's see here. Cannot have cords, wires, or power running from parklet across a sidewalk. No generators. This one from Denver allowed generators. No generators. I would like to see that called out. Yeah. It says use of generators requires a permit and inspection by the CPD zoning. Well, yeah, and so
they gotta have heaters.
Yes. So another one that when I was reading Denver's, it said cannot dump food waste or liquids down the public storm sewers. Making sure that that's called out, that because I can see the waitresses or somebody just dumping their stuff out on the sidewalk, and we don't want that in our stormwater system.
Let's not blame the waitresses.
Well, no, it could be the patrons as well. Cannot adhere anything to the public roadway. Oh yes, so this one in Denver says it calls out specifically they cannot adhere anything to the public roadway or the parking space. And when the parklet is removed, it must remove everything from the parking lane and restore the public right-of-way back to original state or better conditions. I think that it would behoove us to call that out specifically. I'll give you all this stuff. And actually, it was interesting. Jamestown's, this was their proposal. I think this was their program proposal from 2020, and it is a really slick document. I mean, we talk about wanting to make this process easier for businesses. I will give you this one as well, but they have examples in here of what they would look like. It really kind of breaks it down to them in sizable chunks, and I think it might be something to look at if we move forward with this process. Some of the things that popped out for there is that the parklet barriers must be 2 feet clear from the adjacent vehicle travel lane. Now, when I measured some parking spaces downtown, it's kind of weird with the way our parking spaces are located, and I think you had on your thing of the angle. Are we proposing that for those angular spaces, or are we looking at for those angular spaces that the parklet would be at an angle, or would it be square to the sidewalk? And the reason I bring this up is because the parking spaces downtown are about 12 feet wide, and they come out from the curb about 14 feet. The tricky part is from the point,
The diagram shows it being an angle.
yeah, so at this angle, so something that this doesn't quite catch. So here, when you look at this one, it comes to here. In Canby's downtown, this intersection here is actually about here on the adjacent parking spaces line.
Yeah.
So if you were doing a square parklet, you would actually be taking up 3, almost 4 spaces to make a 2-space square parklet. So I would almost say that if we do want to allow 2 to 3 spaces or whatever, it needs to be specified that it has to be at this angle. So that way it doesn't impede, because we have a lot of people in Canby that like to do the J-turn park, and that would run the risk of then hitting this parklet.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that should be called out specifically.
Is that wrong with that?
No, if you can master it, it's good. I've gotten better at it. So that's parklet barrier, overhead elements that span the sidewalk and cannot be, said prohibited. If the platform base is not solid, the space beneath the platform surface must be accessible for maintenance through access panels. I think there should be access panels, period. Who knows if someone drops their keys down there, if someone drops something along the roadway and it gets under there, I think that it's important that there be a way to access underneath the parklet at any point in time. Parklet should be finished with quality materials and must support, this one in Jamestown says specifically that it must support 100 pounds per square foot, and the rails must be capable of withstanding a 200-pound horizontal force. So I think that helps with people leaning up against it, and also should a car or something come in contact with it. Another one is bolting into the street and penetrating the surface of the roadway is prohibited. You'll be required to carry, that's the insurance, you'll be required to keep the parklet free of debris, grime, and graffiti. You must clean the surface of the parklet and rinse out any area beneath the parklet at least once a week. Seeding should be dried after rainfall if necessary. You must keep plants in good health, including watering, weeding, and trimming. This one I like. Any movable items such as tables and chairs must be either locked down at night or taken inside. Unnecessary or unsecured furniture that is not a permanent feature of the parklet is not permitted after business hours. I think that helps with attractive nuisance, so people aren't dragging these things off and I don't think it would happen, but throwing it through a window or something along those lines. Applicants are responsible for completing disassembly and storing their parklet from October 15th to April 15th. That's in New York. So I thought that one was interesting. One other thing that I will just throw out in the one that you sent us, it mentions here that the parklet base must be designed with sufficient structural integrity to withstand urgent removal by dragging or other predetermined and approved methods in the event of an emergency. I think it should be specifically called out where those anchor points should be. I think that they should prove that those anchor points, if grabbed a hold of, will in fact pull the whole parklet out without it falling apart, and that they should be specifically marked and standardized so that fire and rescue know where they're at, so if they need to pull it out, they're not trying to search around to find it.
Nice.
And that's all I had.
Wonderful.
See, every once in a while, I pull one out.
That's why he makes the big toast.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you have a restaurant downtown and they have X number of seating in the restaurant, isn't it a state regulation that they have to have certain size bathrooms? So if we're going to allow a restaurant to expand and have more seating, wouldn't their restroom facilities also have to expand? I realize this is a temporary thing, but I don't want to put outhouses out around the corner.
Excellent question. That's not something the city is necessarily regulating. That would be Clackamas County Building Code. It doesn't really fall into planning code as to how many restrooms are required. This is,
We're going to be if we did this, we would be affecting that.
No, I think that's another question about would there be an authorization from the county? It's a good question. I mean, and that would relate to several things. One is the structural elements. The other would be the bathroom facilities and.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I have is, and I don't know, but isn't and I don't know if it's a state thing or a county thing, but we talked about smoking earlier, is not allowed within X number of feet of the entrance. Is that the way that works now? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so how do we do that? I mean, I get it that we got cars driving by and trucks, and I don't know what's worth exhaust smoke or cigarette smoke, but we're sticking this out in the street. But it just as the chair just talked about, there's, we're extending this out here a distance away. I could see where people say, well, I can smoke here because I'm so many feet away from the entrance. It's a state law, it's okay.
No, we'll make it local.
Okay, and then the other thing I think we should do is I think we should require a certain number of potted trees. For Lorna's comments earlier this evening, that we need to have more trees.
The landscaping part, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think trees would be a good thing.
There you go.
So.
Now, one thing I'm not sure if I mentioned about businesses pooling or sharing the parklet. So this popped into my head regarding and I'm just gonna call out Wayward Sandwich and the bakery, right? Like maybe the bakery doesn't need 2 spaces, they would like a little bit of space, but they don't have enough money to do it themselves. Can 2 businesses kind of come together and pool their resources to do a shared parklet with that being an understanding? Is something I think would be advantageous for opening up for other people to participate if they're sort of blocked out of the process because someone has gotten it in there.
Yeah.
So I think that was it for me.
Jason,
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair.
You're fine.
Associate Planner Brianna, I have a question about the parking orientation. So has it been considered, or does anybody in the room know if it's been considered taking this idea either on a semi-permanent or somewhat permanent basis, but then turning the parking to where you've now got end-to-end parallel parking all the way down? Is that a no-go? Is it something they considered, not a thing?
I don't think it would be possible.
You would.
Okay.
Yeah.
A lot more than what we're talking about right now.
Yeah, and the way all of the curbing and the sidewalk bump outs and all that stuff has been engineered, it's for that angular parking. So it would
Roger
not, I'm 99% sure that they would not consider doing that. Commissioner Jarosh?
I know for me, with meetings like this or any of the city meetings, when there's a show of force of citizens or business owners, like the FOB taproom folks came in mass and, said, we really need this. I think that's great and it's impressive. It's even more impressive to me, though, when people come and they've done some fact-based research and present their research as a way of trying to encourage a change or to encourage a decision. That's just very effective for me. So if anyone in the business area is going to watch this on YouTube, I would encourage them not to just let us do the homework, but you guys do the homework too and convince us. Here are the cities that are doing this and here's what makes it successful and here's how we should do it. So I'd like to hear from the business owners too that are interested.
Mm-hmm. And I will just throw out too, it's been mentioned about parking. The city, and this might be a little bit of a dig, a few years ago, the city did have an opportunity to buy quite a bit of acreage down here where this house is on the other side of the parking lot for the movie theater, and they chose not to do it. They were going to get a good price for it, and they had first call on it, but they refused. They decided not to buy it, and I think that. And I appreciate Commissioner Calkins' point of view that there isn't really there might be a perceived problem of parking, but not an actual problem of parking. That might be the case now, but once the Canby Beer Library is built out, and if we have any more dahlias pop up downtown or anything like that, it can very quickly become a problem. And I do not see any work on behalf of the larger, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll be happy to be wrong, but I don't really see an effort that has been put forward by the council and by the larger city as a whole to really look at that for the future. We all just sort of stick our heads in the sand and say, oh yeah, there's parking spots down here and this business will use these and these. It's never been looked at. And I hope from the TSP, and I will be pushing for this, that there is a long-term plan to fix the parking. If I had been on council and I had my way with it, there would be a parking structure under this building. You would have dragged me kicking and screaming out of this chamber to tell me that there wouldn't be, and they would, because it was super expensive to do it. But even back then when I was on council, I was beating this drum, and here we sit planning to do all of this stuff, and nothing has been done to prepare for it. So that's my rant about that. Yes?
Well, on that point, and I don't disagree with you on that point, which is there is a point where parking, the downtown continues to grow, there will be a maximum capacity. There is mathematically one, and if it hits it, it's a problem, right? And I was talking about earlier in the year about Haynes being over capacity and the issues with the distribution centers and all of that. On the website, it does say one of our duties is to formally advise council on things that we see happening from our performing, the things that come. Is there a way that we can start formally saying some of these things? If we feel strongly about the parking downtown, we feel strongly about the traffic or whatever the issues that come up, we feel strongly that the trees are being taken away, that we actually send this to, we talk about it here, but send this to them formally in a way, in a written way or in a presentation to advise them on some of these things that we can agree on. And so they take those recommendations into consideration when they're making decisions like on that house.
Yeah. So what is the conduit for that? Is it you? Is it our liaison? How does that get there?
And when we get to the planning director part of our hearing tonight, I have some ideas on some of these, so maybe we could close this chapter out and move to the next section.
Are we all good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I would like, if I could give these to you, and if you could make a copy of them so I could get them back, because I will forget where I found all of this stuff.
Chair Pad,
Yeah.
could we take a 5-minute recess for a bathroom break? 2-minute recess?
I think can we do a 5?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and take a 5-minute recess to take care of some business. Thank you very much. Welcome back, Canby, to what will hopefully be a fairly quick end to our planning commission meeting. We have completed our work session, and now we are moving on to items of interest and reports from the planning director.
Chair Padden, just a few updates. I'm going to start with future work sessions as a continuation of this discussion. Great conversation tonight on Parklets. September 21st, 6 p.m., Planning Commission, City Council, Parklet discussion back here. Again, I think the council there's valuable information you all discussed. Brianna will be presenting again at that, and so I think it'll be a good point to kind of hone in this in. Staff is really seeking direction here on what this should, we can make it anything it needs to be. We just need that direction, and you guys are all decision makers here. So that's the first one. A couple other things in September, just for FYI. September 27th, there's a housing advisory committee on September 27th. There'll be an economic advisory committee on September 29th. Those committees are working forward to make recommendations, and there'll be a discussion from those meetings on October 19th, joint Planning Commission City Council work session, which will be an update for the housing and economic opportunity assessment work that's been done to date. Kind of memorializing everything done to date, and the next steps will be discussed at that. As I mentioned earlier, the comprehensive plan and transportation system plan were just advertised today. I'm hoping council will be meeting on November 16th to make a formal decision on a consultant selection. There's about a month time to give consultants the ability to reply back, followed by about a month to make a selection, and then about a month to get to hearing. So that's the general time frame. So I'm hoping by end of year, we have a consulting team on the comp plan and transportation system plan fully on board and moving forward. On hearing items, September 12th was going to be Amazon. That is on hold. And we're not sure what their ETA is. They're still within the 120-day window, but they're on hold currently. My suggestion for that, since we don't have other items, Lana Bollinger made a strong argument about trees, and I just had a brief conversation with her. I would suggest that we talk about a tree ordinance in the city. That's a little different venue than acquiring urban land for forestry purposes or preservation. Tree ordinances are elements that I'd like to get your input on, council's input on, but essentially the formula is there's a certain number of tree units per acre required for each development. If you want to remove all the trees on the property, you have to pay into a fund to essentially plant trees elsewhere in the city or preserve trees, typically at 30 tree units an acre. Different sized trees have different credits to them. I'm very familiar with these programs, having worked in multiple cities and implemented those as a consultant on the other side of things. They work pretty well. So that's the first step in that. That obviously has to have council approval, but I think since there's not another item, I think that would be a good discussion point to at least bring that forward. I did encourage Mrs. Bollinger to pursue discussions with the administrator on the urban forestry piece that's outside of my purview. I can't really deal with that. That's kind of a parks forestry issue that's outside of what I can deal with. But at least on the tree ordinance piece, it goes a little more step forward about looking at a site and maybe considering like not removing every tree from the site because there would be consequences to that. And also looking at preserving larger trees, which is the intention of those ordinances, because a large tree might be 20 tree units or more, 25 tree units, and maybe saving a couple large trees, you end up creating a different kind of dynamic to your development.
Okay.
So that's something I'd like to put on the 12th. September 26th, we'll have Canby Center. October 5th, we should have 4th Avenue Fiveplex. October 19th, we should probably, these are again tentative, Territorial Apartments on October 19th. And then November 14th, possibly fencing coming back again for discussion. It's going to take a little time for Ryan Potter to bring that back forward to you all. The other thing we talked about last time was Baker Center, which is, that project is now OLCC, and that probably is several months out. That's a major modification. They're having to start over again, which is essentially a pre-application conference and resubmittal, followed by a hearing that Planning Commission will be reviewing. So the two big ones, Amazon and Baker Center, have both been paused for momentarily.
So it sounds like all the hair on fire in the fall has now been, that fire's gone out.
Well, not really, because we've got all these other things that are not hearing items that you guys are not dealing with.
Well,
So,
yeah.
I mean, it's,
Well, yeah, our hair's not on fire anymore.
our
Y'all are on
hairs,
fire.
yeah, we're trying to,
So much
we're
fire over there.
racing to the finish, and there may be other items that get added as well to council's work sessions that we will be part of as well that are not on this list.
Okay.
So, and their work sessions are filling rapidly, like, it's going to be tough to put anything on probably until, the second meeting in November at this point. I just know from like everything stacking. And so that's where we're at on things. So if there are questions about any of these items or others, let me know.
Okay. Commissioner Drosh?
When does Amazon's time run out?
They're not that far into it because their traffic study was just reviewed. I think they're probably around 45 days into the process of 120.
Okay, thank you, Don.
And Ryan and I just spoke this evening, and I said, we really need to make sure that if they've given us an on hold email, but I want something more official if this continues for indefinite. If it's in the next 30 days, that's a little different than at the next 3 months. We kind of need to know. That's a big difference for me. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So so for you folks that are running for city council, hopefully you're watching this and that you are prepared to deal with this stuff when the time comes. It's not all about killing projects that are going on in the city. There's a lot more work to be done. So let that just be known. Okay, I do have one quick question. Is there, when we were talking last, Ryan let the cat out of the bag regarding flag lot frontages? I don't know if you're familiar with this.
Vaguely, give me the reminder.
So essentially it was like, we were talking about the whole thing, it was born out of the fence discussion of what is the rules regarding the frontage of houses built on a flag lot? So does it need to hit the same standards as a street front house because it's set back? And he had said, it sounded like there was maybe some cleanup that could be done to that. And I would just say that if he has some hidden documents that he's secretly been working on in the basement, maybe that's something else that could be brought up on the 12th.
Okay, flag lots, okay.
Just as an option, if you folks want to look at that.
Let me run that back by him. And I do know that fire access is pretty critical. That may be one of the changing dynamics of this is that our code versus fire width requirements, those are obviously the greater of those two would apply. So those are probably part of that discussion.
Yeah, it sounded like there was something there that was on his radar, and I would say that if we have some time, that would be good.
Okay. I'll remind him, and maybe that we tie that back into the fencing thing.
It could be.
Okay, I think that might be, since that sounds like it was born out of that, so to speak.
I just want to keep picking fruit, Don. We got to pick this fruit. I want to get as many bushels of fruit across this dais for city council before the end of the year as possible. I want to have a fruit salad across this dais. Fences in the whole 9 yards. I love it. Okay, so anything else from you, Don?
No, that was it.
Any questions from Don? Or for Don?
So going back to what I was saying before, how can we get a formal, I know at the recent meeting, the Parks Advisory Boards gave their recommendation, a big list of things, I guess. And then the council had to say that they received it or something and looked at it out. But how can we do something like that for our kind of concerns that we're, so trying to be solution oriented rather than kind of rant oriented, which we've been from time to time.
Well, I think Don, you have that, right? We made a note of that in the previous discussion.
I did, and it's,
And we're gonna just work to formalize that process.
I think that one thing that we're really trying to strive for is council had their own goals that they established for the year. And we're trying to use that as our template is, you know, if those are, I mean, obviously you guys are welcome to go to council meetings and bring up other items. We're trying to chip away at that list, and I think we're doing a pretty good job. The code is a big one of that, and that's a continuation of this thing is like, I mean, we could literally spend all of our time on the code and not do anything else. I mean, there's not much to do, and it's like, so but I think the directive really is council's goals and objectives, and we're following those, and the format really is to go before council to like, if you want to add or, you know, focus, like in some of these, they're directing that are coming out, that are directing back to staff on what's our priorities. But that is really our driving force is their goals and objectives.
Sure. So I guess I would say until we hammer something else out, if folks are comfortable, you can either go to a city council meeting, but if you are comfortable and you say, you know, these are the things that we as a council, we as a commission want the council to see, I have no problem going to a city council meeting and expressing that directly to the council. I have no problem doing that. So if that is the case and you have something to convey to them, you know, within reason, I'm happy to do that. I regularly attend those meetings. So anything else? Okay, I will just say so items of interest for the planning commission, I have one thing. Is there anything, anybody else have anything? No? Okay, so I did just want to let folks know that the revisions for the historic landmark and group went through city council and it was approved. The only change that was made by the council was the removal of the changes for the makeup of the group. So it still has to be, you know, a majority of the folks need to come from within the city. They chose not to change that and open that up. But otherwise, everything else that we proposed and that the city, that the planning department proposed was approved. So kudos to the group for that. And so with that, that is all I have. Anything else?
I motion to adjourn.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? We are adjourned. Have a wonderful night, Canby, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.